Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, the reality is the quote unquote, those things don't happen to us kind of discussions really don't exist anymore. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about state of the industry, current projects, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm assuming that you do, because you're listening, obviously. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us over at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel, so you can give us a like and subscribe there as well. We'd really appreciate it. Also, you can find us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image in general, because we love to write about it and talk about it, and we love it when you come by and read about it. On this episode, we've got an interesting one. We're talking about the Woodstock Film Festival happening in upstate New York, in Woodstock, of all places. You would that feels like a no-brainer, but it's true. We're a little late on this one, but it was a good one. We're talking about Our American Family, which just had its world premiere, and it's really a story of addiction because it looks just how all-encompassing it can be, not just the people who are dealing with the addiction, but those around them as well. And this film really provides an honest and unfiltered look at a Philadelphia family who's really close-knit, and they're dealing with generational substance abuse. And you see this is very much a thing, and the filmmakers were there at this moment where these people had nothing to lose, and we see 5 different family members who are tired of the struggle of addiction in one way or another, and they want to just sort of overcome it. And it's such a hard journey, but it's really an interesting one to, as we watch these people sort of break this sort of wrenching and entrenched pattern that just has been happening in their lives. And can they make enough of a shift to help the next generations? And it's a fascinating watch, and we had the distinct pleasure of sitting down with director and producer Hallee Adelman to just discuss the issues around the film and so very much more. I hope you enjoy our talk because it's a good one. And just to add to that, it's if you know anyone who's struggling with addiction and all that sort of thing, like please reach out and please understand that this disease and these problems are so far more reaching than most of us can even comprehend and fathom. This really was an eye-opening film for me, and I hope you enjoy our talk with Hallee. Okay, we're going. All right. Well, I mean, obviously, first off, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this.
Thank you so much for the time. I'm so grateful just to be sitting with you and having this moment. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Now, I mean, obviously, congratulations on the film. And I mean, I was really struck by it because, I mean, obviously, we've seen similar stories in film before, but I don't think we've ever seen an entire family sort of having to really, I mean, as much as families do sort of deal with these issues on a day-to-day basis, seeing like almost literally the entire family have to deal with this really was a fascinating watch. I guess my first question for you is, how did you sort of find your subjects and find these people and sort of get embedded into their lives to be able to tell this story?
Well, thank you for your words about the film. As far as meeting the family, I'm a local author. I live in the same township as the family.
Okay.
And I was actually doing research for a teen novel in which one of the siblings was struggling with substance abuse disorder and the other was not. And Linda, the mom that's in Our American Family, had heard that I was working on this project and suggested that I speak with both Nicole and Stephen, who you see in the film. Mm. And that really started our relationship. It's really hard, as I'm sure you could see, to not meet them and just care very deeply about them. And that's kind of what happened. It forged this really long relationship together. My daughter, who's now a senior in high school, did her 5th grade project on substance abuse disorder and created like a Team Nicole. And, anytime the family was looking for community support, whether it's to get, furniture for a new apartment Nicole's moving into, or, just, people cheering them on at a hard time, we just were part of a community that rallied around them. So we had a really deep relationship by the time we started filming years later.
Now, and that's a beautiful thing, because obviously this film basically shows everything, warts and all. And that's not an easy sort of commitment to make, because I can sure there were moments where it's like, no, turn off the camera, but you couldn't, because that's sort of where the story is. And I'm kind of curious, how did you manage to sort of balance friendship versus the filmmaker? Because I can imagine it was a hard line to walk.
I think I honestly, I just really approach all of anything I do in life with love. So I really start with love first. And I think that just guided us, along with how loving the team around us was. Our team was super loving, and how brave the family genuinely is. Linda is so fierce. She keeps reminding me, like, we can't stop. Yeah. Like, we can't shut off cameras. We can't, because that's what addiction wants you to do. Like, addiction wants you to feel like you have to hide. Addiction wants you to cower. Addiction wants you to be small. So really, Linda and the family has been just that brave to decide they don't want addiction to win, in a sense. And by winning, just allowing people to feel like they have to be quiet. So that's really the beauty, I think, of us just all kind of working together with a mix of love and tenacity, frankly.
I love that you say it comes from a place of love, because obviously, without giving too much away, there is let's just without spoiling it, there's more or less a positive ending to the film. But not everyone gets those positive endings. But I love that the perspective that you shine on this story, because it shows that there is a way out. It shows that there is a path to surviving this. I think if somebody said it in the movie, it's something you have to live with. And I think that's an important thing to really show, and just sort of put out there in the world, that it can be lived with, it can be managed, as opposed to sort of cured and overcome, which is a bit of the false narrative that I guess kind of gets put out there in other projects like this.
Yeah, and I think the family definitely wanted to make sure that people, like, we saw in the film, in Our American Family, you see Linda really struggling with enabling, right? You see her learned behaviors coming through in such a genuine and honest and real mom kind of way. And it was a struggle for her. At one point in the film, the family's invited to a wedding in Vegas for a family. It was a struggle for her to choose that over Nicole, who is just transitioning into a new recovery facility, to choose going rather than staying and sitting and coddling addiction, in a sense. So it really was the family again and again making choices to live in spite of addiction, and to be as brave as absolutely possible. And for Nicole, really learning, she says at one point in the film, really learning to find empowerment in the pain and also feel the pain.
What made you want to tell this story visually? Because like you said, you're a writer. This could have been a book or an article or something like that, but I think it works. I think it hits home a lot more telling it visually, and I'm kind of curious on your perspective on that. What made you want to make this into a film?
It's funny. We originally talked about writing. Nicole, I was actually working with Nicole on her own writing for a while, and just realized we realized together that medium might just not be right for where she was at that moment. She happens to be a beautiful writer, so that's not to say, who knows what she and the family will do later. But in that moment, where the family was for that moment, there was an importance of telling the story. And then the question just became, what's the right vessel given what's making sense for all the family members at this moment?
Mm. No, and I mean, I think that makes total sense because I mean, we live in such a day and age where we see all this, like we're bombarded with content. I mean, I know it's a dirty word, but like anyone can pick up a phone and make a movie now, really, when you think about it. And it's one of those things where the medium and the message need to be paired so correctly. And I mean, I'm kind of curious on your perspective on this because we see so many different stories out there where, oh, this might have been better as a book, or they really should have turned that into a show or a docu-series or something. How important do you think it comes down to sort of creators and people who write and do stuff to sort of know how to pair the medium and the message that they want to get out there?
I think for me, it comes down a lot to what do we want our viewers to be left with?
Mm.
What kind of feeling can we leave them with? And in this case, there is something that's amazing about not just hearing the family, but also seeing them, seeing how real they are, seeing the story of, like Stephen, one of the members in the family who genuinely has to act or felt like he had to act perfect all the time,
Right.
to ease his family's burden. And seeing Brian, I think you saw the scene between Brian and Linda when they were eating and, having a tense moment, but seeing Brian's genuine struggle of whether or not he should let Nicole even back into their lives, whether or not he believed that addiction was a disease rather than a byproduct of laziness, like seeing it on their faces, it really does, for me, allowed me to feel it in my body, and hopefully it could allow viewers to also feel what they're going through as well.
I mean, I think that's right. I love that you brought that up because I think that was a moment that really hit home with me because you can't sort of explain those moments. You just have to show them. It's one of those things that you can't contextualize that kind of emotion that they were going through without actually seeing sort of the pain of it all on their face. And I'm kind of curious, during this whole process, is there anything that surprised you during it all as you're sort of not just following this family and following their lives, but constructing a narrative and seeing where this family's narrative is taking you?
Well, one of the things that surprised me separate from the family's narrative is just how close addiction is to all of us.
Yeah.
During the making of this film, my little cousin, who I've grown up with like a sister, she'd come over with her husband to my house. And, sometimes he'd be super, super sweet. And sometimes he'd be like kind of moody, honestly. And it wasn't until afterward and working with this family that I realized, oh my gosh, he's struggling with substance abuse disorder. And he wound up passing away from a heroin overdose. And my cousin is raising her son on her own now. And it struck me how close this is, to everyone. You don't know what people are dealing with behind closed doors. You don't know if your teacher has a family member that's struggling. You don't know if, the barista that you bump into and say hi to every morning is struggling. So that was one of the things that really struck me while making the film.
I mean, it's an amazing thing because, I mean, considering what we've all been going through sort of on a global scale and how we've all been isolated and sheltered, like how important do you think it is to just be able to share this kind of story? Because, I mean, again, like I said, we're used to these stories having a bad ending, but they don't necessarily have to. And I mean, I think it's important to put sort of at least that modicum of positivity out there in the world, especially now.
I totally agree. I mean, Nicole has always said that the opposite of this disease is connection. So for other families to be able to see themselves, whether they're dealing with addiction in their families or there's something else, for other families to be able to see, wait a minute, there's a mom and she struggles with enabling and minimizing things, or wait a minute, I feel like maybe I've caused my family an undue burden, or wait a minute, I'm resentful for someone in my family who might be dealing with an issue. For families and people to be able to see others who are brave enough to put themselves forward, and as Nicole would say, show the nitty gritty, because that's what she was really pushing for all along. It's really meaningful, and it can be really freeing. This family clearly wants to bash stigmas. They clearly want people to feel that they can be open about something that most people typically hide from showing about themselves. And if we can, at the very least, create compassion and show families that making the decision day after day, like as Linda says, to just do the right thing, they're just going to decide to do the next right thing. They're not making any promises. They're not saying this is a perfect bow. They're saying we are committed to trying to do the next right thing.
Do you think at the end of the day, now that the movie's sort of getting out there in the universe, that that's sort of the pull away that you want audiences to have, that just that it to be open and to sort of admit that we all in some way or another have a varying degree of struggles across a wide spectrum of people, just that we have to go through and we have to deal with, and it's okay to talk about it and it's okay to be open about it rather than sort of cloister it away and hide it.
Yeah, I think there's an openness that's really fair to bring up, but it's also people are where they are.
Yeah.
So we're certainly not saying you have to tomorrow share everything that is important to you, but we're saying, look, here's a family that has done this in order to serve the community and serve other families that are struggling. So at the very least, how can we find compassion when people are brave enough to kind of lead the way in allowing other people to feel comfortable in their own skin, or to inspire other people to be on a journey in the way they are on this journey to help others. So I'm blown away by them every day. And I'm just honestly honored and grateful to have had the opportunity to work with them and see where they want to take this.
Well, I think you've made a beautiful film, and it really is a fantastic conversation starter. Just I like at its pure basis, just to be open to compassion, which is something that is so easily forgotten. And I just want to say congratulations on the film, and I hope it does everything you hope it does. And just thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Bye.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.